What's up, guys? Ace here. I don't know if you missed it, but JD Vance this weekend gave one of the most incredible speeches at AmFest I've ever seen a politician give. It was extremely important and bold speech that tells you everything you need to know about why all the wrong people are terrified of him, and they're all trying to end his opportunity to become president in 2028. I'm going to go through some clips, break it down for you, and show you why this speech is so incredibly important. Let's get started. Here's JD.
More than any time I can recount, people are talking about American identity and figuring out what it is that unites us. But I want to say something here. The only thing that has truly served as an anchor of the United States of America is that we have been, and by the grace of God, we always will be, a Christian nation.
I mean, there it is right there. I can't tell you the last time I heard a politician say this other than Trump. But Trump, everybody just kind of like thinks he's playing a game. But JD is supposed to be the future. And this really, as you're going to see here in a minute, this is like the totality of his message in this speech. As a Christian, I can tell you that I am very pleased to finally see that somebody's actually being so bold about this. But JD goes in much greater detail. And as you watch this, just think to yourself, if you've ever heard a modern politician speak like this.
Now, I want to be explicit because, of course, the fake news media will twist everything that I say. I'm not saying... Do you feel about them the same way I do? I'm not saying you have to be a Christian to be an American. I'm saying something simpler and truer. Christianity is America's creed. The shared moral language from the Revolution to the Civil War and beyond. Across that history, our country's major debates have always centered on how we could best as a people please God.
That's a bold statement. Did you guys hear that? As a people, we've always tried our best to look at what pleased God. Now, he's obviously talking about the founders going forward. There's a lot to unpack there. That's a bold statement. And again, this is just stuff you never hear from anybody else. I don't care. Well, let me finish this clip.
Creed. Think about it. That creed motivated our understanding of natural law and rights, our sense of duty to one's neighbor, the conviction that the strong must protect the weak, and the belief in individual conscience. Even our famously American idea of religious liberty is a Christian concept. Because we're all creatures of God, we must respect each individual's pathway to that God. But over the last 50 years, there has been a singular focus, a war that has been waged on Christians and Christianity in the United States of America. And let me say, of all the wars that Donald Trump has ended, that is the one we're proudest of.
Okay. So JD's had this theme. He kind of did this before at the last Turning Point event he spoke at. There's a theme. Notice when he says the last 50 years. Well, what started 50 years ago? 50 years ago was when the Soviet Union started weakening until it fell. 50 years ago is when our institutions became pretty much completely overtaken by communists. You know what communists do? The first thing they do, they get rid of Christians. They go after Christianity as it's the biggest threat to them. Always has been. This is true in Russia. It's true in China. Go down the list. They hate it because to communists, the state is God. This is an actually massive statement. No other president talks like this. Even Trump doesn't talk this specifically about it. And there's a wild, bold-faced lie out there, a theory, but it's a lie, that JD is somehow the Manchurian candidate for institutions, especially for the technocrats. It's simply not true. Not at all. First of all, the technocrats would never use Christianity to get in. Okay, because Christianity in America, it's not what it used to be when it comes, like, if you're using it for, like, say, a marketing slogan. We are still a majority Christian nation, yes, but nowhere close to where we were before. And even now, where 65% or so of people claim to be Christian, you got 30% of those people who are completely weak and afraid to speak about their religion and feel guilty about being Christian. It's really bad. Trust me. I know, I've been in the church my whole life. On top of that, you have another part of that, Christians who are pretty liberal. So it's not looked at as like this blanket unifier. George Bush, who was supposed to be like the Christian president, he had a lot of evangelical support. He was never this bold. Reagan wasn't this bold. Nixon, no Republican talks like this. Romney wasn't like this. McCain, even the ones who lost. They don't do this because the Uniparty doesn't speak like this, because the Uniparty doesn't want to uplift Christianity. They might use faith when it suits them. Even Obama did that. They'll use faith. They'll allude to it. They'll, here and there to try to keep the Christians there, but they won't use it as their main platform. This is what makes JD different, and what to me is even just like substantial proof that he's not running the narrative. He's not a plant. He's definitely not deep state. Because if you're encouraging people to choose faith, if you're encouraging people to be Christian, if you're telling them our identity as a nation is inherently Christian, by doing that, you negate their power. You take away the people's need for them as their God, which is a communist manifesto, right? We need the government to take care of us. Workers unite, Nietzsche, religion's the opiate for the masses. So you just give them enough to like keep them off you. That's how they think about us. But what JD's doing here is much different and much bolder. Listen as he continues.
For decades, the left has labored to push Christianity out of national life. They've kicked it out of the schools, out of the workplace, out of the fundamental parts of the public square. Freedom of religion transformed into freedom from religion. And in a public square devoid of God, we got a vacuum. And the ideas that filled that void preyed on the very worst of human nature rather than uplifting it. They told us not that we were children of God, but children of this or that identity group. They replaced God's beautiful design for the family that men and women could rely on and turn to one another, with the idea that men could turn into women so long as they brought the right bunch of pills from Big Pharma. They had all the religious fervor of a zealous convert without any of the grace or forgiveness of a true Christian. Scripture tells us, by your fruits ye shall know them. And we might ask, what are the fruits of these people and their principles? And the answer is a man named Tyler Robinson who killed my friend.
Okay. So now he's going straight into defeating this narrative. Now, JD's doing it with class. He's not calling out any influencers by name. But this is the psyop that's been going on for the last few weeks, a couple months actually, trying to divide MAGA. They're using Charlie Kirk. JD was best friends with Charlie Kirk, looked at him like a brother. And now JD is directly saying that Tyler Robinson's a killer. Now JD has much more information than anybody else. And it's not saying that he's not, wasn't more people involved, all that. We can debate all that later. That's not what JD's saying here. What he is saying is that we have a concrete person to point at, and he's gonna break this up more and show you why it's so important that they don't want Tyler Robinson to be known as a killer, because it's going to go after their narrative. It goes after what the real enemy is, which JD rightly recognizes is cultural. Politics is downstream from culture. The main important thing here is ideologies that are inherently evil. And when we try to make it not what it really is and not point at the leftist Tyler Robinson and all that he was a part of and the evil that comes from that, well, And you start going at, well, look at this Trump administration. They're the Christian administration. They're doing things different. But really, are they? Are they just the same as usual? It's nonsense. It's all part of the psyop, because it's clear this administration is different. JD is going to be much different than any of the institutionalists, the uniparty going forward. Watch this.
Think about it. He has everything that the far left want from our young men. He rejected the conservatism and the spirituality, the values of a small town family. He moved into a small apartment. He became addicted to porn. He became addicted to hate. And he ended up sleeping with somebody who doesn't know whether they're a man or a woman. That is the nightmare scenario, but that is the scenario that the left has actively advertised they want for American families. And the young men in the audience in particular. That is exactly why we have to fight them. Because the fruits of true Christianity are men like Charlie Kirk.
Amen. So good. So good. So there he draws a direct contrast between what's been happening to males in this country. The demasculinization of America, the feminization of America, the taking away men's ability to be men, teaching us how to be men. I mean, there is a crisis in our nation right now, especially of young men desperately seeking for identity. And they want that by default because strong men are the protectors, they're the defenders of values and family. And without that, you get a toxic empathy. Now, I love women. Feminization is a beautiful thing when it's balanced with masculinity. We've come out of balance. And that's what he's pointing to right here, is the lack of identity in American males now that has helped to ruin America. And I'm not blaming women for ruining America. No, it's that we're out of balance. A society that's too masculine is out of balance. Look at Muslim cultures. Patriarchal cultures that are abusive to women. That is out of balance. It's horrible. Well, we've gone the other way. We've gone feminized, and our men are struggling. They are lacking identity. And when this happens, when you remove Jesus, when you remove Christianity that anchored this, and it doesn't have to be Christianity that teaches masculinity, but it does. It definitely does. And we are a Christian nation. We were created as a Christian nation. We've always been from our inception. Our foundation is that. So it's our foundation that's missing. And Vance nails it perfectly. And young men loved Charlie Kirk. And now there's this great vacuum. And so we're getting this push for Nick Fuentes to take over the Charlie Kirk role for these men, or Andrew Tate, or a bunch of people, but especially those ones are the loudest, that are terrible for young men. Terrible role models. Just encourage the hate, encourage the anger, instead of constructively helping men become men, masculine, men of honor, with defined roles, with that desire to defend, not the victim mentality. Oh, I've been hurt as a man, I'm going to take it out on everybody. Blame women, blame other races, whatever it is. It's so weak and pathetic. And even though when Nick Fuentes makes good points, it's followed up by weak and pathetic victim mentality. And all these young men are soaking it up because they don't have another answer. But all of it's part of the psyop. Don't you understand? It's all part of this uniparty, because that's what weakens us. This is another tell that JD is not part of that. And so I can't, whoever's out there trying to tie and destroy JD Vance's career, they're all part of the enemy. Even if they're an influencer and they're putting this together. No, it's all the wrong people. The neocons and the left hate JD more than anybody. And who are the neocons and the left united by? They're united by the deep state. They are the two sides of the deep state. And by the neocons, I mean the establishment Republicans, because that's who all the establishment Republicans are now. It's establishment Republicans, neocons, and the left, all used by the deep state, all uniparty. And they all hate JD Vance. So if you're falling for the psyop that JD Vance is one of them, you have to be smarter than that. Ask yourself this: has any uniparty type ever spoken like JD does? Have they ever called out these true issues we're dealing with? And the answer, I can tell you, as somebody who's been doing this for more than 20 years, is a resounding no. Let's watch some more.
The fruits of true Christianity are good husbands, patient fathers, builders of great things, and slayers of dragons. And yes, men who are willing to die for a principle if that's what God asks them to do.
Let's pause right there. Men who are willing to die for ideals are dangerous in a good way, a good danger. You notice the difference between kill for an ideal versus die for an ideal. The left will kill for their ideals. The neocons, the deep state, gladly will kill for their ideals. But the man who will die, who will be martyred for their ideals, is the most dangerous, just like Charlie Kirk. Anyways.
Because so many of us recognize that it is better to die a patriot than live a coward. I'm going to tell you something I haven't talked about publicly before, but in the days after Charlie's death, I struggled a great deal. I'm sure many of you did too. I remember watching every video of the assassination, looking for clues, trying to understand what happened. I'd try to hide my friend and that terrible bullet hitting him, but I would try to look around. I stayed up all night for many nights in a row, researching every conspiracy theory, going down every rabbit hole. When my lovely wife, Usha, told me to come to bed, I told her I owed it to Charlie to try to uncover every stone, and so that's what I tried to do. I remember I was consumed by this fear that Charlie's death wouldn't just deprive a family of their husband or of a good father, but that it would deny our movement of a great unifier of people and a great doer of great deeds. It's the only time I can remember my wife ever telling me that she was really worried about me. She told me it many times. But what saved me was not lying to myself, but accepting the reality of the fight that we're in. Charlie's death was an immense loss, an irreplaceable loss. We got kicked in the teeth, my friends, and there's no sugarcoating it or pretending that it didn't happen. We need to accept that. And what saved me was realizing that the story of the Christian faith, like the story of these United States of America, is one of immense loss followed by even bigger victory. It's a story.
This is powerful.
It's a story of very dark nights followed by very bright dawns. What saved me was remembering the inherent goodness of God and that His grace overflows when we least expect it. Not long ago, I spent
Okay, stop right there. This man sounds like a preacher. I'm just saying. I've been in the church my whole life. And grew up, my father was a pastor, and I myself was a pastor for 10 years. I've trained and been taught by the best in the world, people who many of you would know if I said their names, especially if you're in the church. Very, very prominent American pastors, and none of the ones who've gotten in trouble for anything. Let me be honest about that. This is not typical politician speech. This is not somebody who is making it up. This is heartfelt stuff. This is the kind of stuff I know. I can tell. I've always been around it. I can tell when somebody is just going for some pointers, when they're trying to make something up that sounds good. I've been around fake Christians my whole life, and I've been around the real ones. This is genuine speech coming from JD. This is the kind of stuff that's heartfelt. Again, There's so much stuff out there right now that's just nonsense. This is a man who is legitimately a man of faith, and there is something special going on here. And JD, as he speaks, you can hear it. Let it speak to you. Actually listen and remove the blinders and actually listen and drop down the black pill crap and just listen, because we don't hear politicians speak like this. And we certainly do not hear Manchurian candidate types speak like this. That was Obama. And there's a massive difference between how Obama spoke about certain things like this and JD does. Let's continue.
Time at a Christian men's ministry just a couple of weeks ago. And here's what they do. They take men who struggle with addiction or homelessness, and they help them get back on their feet. They feed them, they clothe them, they give them shelter and financial advice. They live out the very best part of Christ's commission. Now afterwards, I had lunch with 4 of these men. It was a couple of white guys, a Hispanic guy, and a black man. They had all struggled in their unique ways. Some had lost contact with their family, some of them for a very long time. Others were desperate to rebuild relationships with their kids so that they could see them on Christmas. But all of them were back on their feet. And what saved them? It wasn't racial commonality or grievance. It wasn't some philosophical jargon. It wasn't a DEI prep course, and it wasn't a welfare check. It was the fact that a carpenter died 2,000 years ago and changed the world in the process.
Absolutely incredible stuff, mind-blowing stuff. You just don't hear this. That is literally what he just gave, was basically the altar call. He did this with Ben Shapiro being up there. The Jews, Ben Shapiro's the biggest Zionist there is. Okay, this is from the administration that's said to be controlled by Israel. Well, if Israel controlled you, you're not speaking about Christ and getting back to being a Christian nation this boldly, because the Jews aren't. Israel's either, most of them aren't even hardcore people of faith, of their Jewish faith. Most of them are not atheists, but what's the word I'm looking for here? Just very secular. Okay. Bibi Netanyahu is not going and praying every day at the Weeping Wall or anything like that. Okay. Let's just be honest. But what they don't do is they're people controlled by them. It's very generic terms when they speak of faith. A lot of God, not the pointing to Jesus as a savior. JD, just in front of all these people who are Zionists, and many of them controlled by AIPAC and so on and so forth, is turning people towards Christ. I'm sorry, this is incredible stuff. We do not see this. We've had lower tier politicians talk like this before, but they never go anywhere. But now we have the people who are actually in control. And the reason those politicians didn't go anywhere, they didn't have the infrastructure. They weren't controlled by the deep state. That was all that was allowed before Trump. And now Trump's broken through, and he chose the one man who I believe in the Senate and in the federal government that actually can lead this movement forward and take it to a new level, a higher level. MAGA is ultimately a Christian movement. Everything about MAGA, that's why MAGA, if you break it down by policy, it's actually much more moderate than hardcore Republican policy-wise, of the, say, the 90s or early 2000s. Trump brought a lot of moderation in. The neocons are out. Okay, they're not part of MAGA. You push that out. You have a little bit more openness on say even stuff like Social Security, stuff like that. We're not a big welfare group. MAGA's not. MAGA believes in working hard, but we're not totally against it either. We are like if Clinton hadn't been atrocious, but his policies, he was so moderate in his policies once the Republican Congress came in 94. MAGA's closer to that than it is to the Bush Republicans, than definitely Obama Democrats, or even Reagan Republicans. MAGA is its own thing. Now it's taken over the Republican Party, but ultimately it's a Christian movement. The strongest aspect of MAGA is that. However, with Trump as the leader, we're not going to ever fully get into that. And that's okay. Trump has his own role. But JD is the future. And the reason they're so terrified of him, because if someone like JD becomes president, and he's so openly a man of faith, and he so openly believes in America as a Christian nation, that gets pushed so much, and he inspires people, and we lead a roaring economy during that time, and people are feeling better, and he brings patriotism back with faith. Well, that's the kind of thing that eradicates leftism, that eradicates neoconism for decades. I've always said this, that Trump is our bulldozer. He's the one, the wrecking ball that comes in, knocking it all down, has to do it. He's the fighter, the purger. But JD is going to be the rebuilder, and it's going to be rebuilding on faith, because that's who he is. And after what this guy's been through in his life, I'm sorry, everybody I've ever known who came through the hardest background and became their own person after that, their own man, their own woman, if they went through hell like he did growing up, they cannot be bought later. That's just how it is. If they got through it and they become a strong person, a healthy person, then they can never be bought, because they're like, what are you going to do to me? I've been through hell. I lived through it. No, it's always the people born in comfort who are weak, or the people who went through hell and were broken by it. That's always the ones you watch out for. It's never the ones who go through it and find strength and health. And JD did it through Jesus. I know it because I've seen it a million times as someone who's ministered to thousands and thousands of people. I'm telling you, this is the real deal. Let's continue.
If you go to almost any food pantry in this country, you will find Christians feeding the poor. If you go to addicts whose families won't even speak to them, like my mom was at a certain point of her life, it's often the Christian ministries that stay with them at their very lowest moments. You'll find Christians sitting patiently beside hospice beds and in recovery rooms and in all the places of the world where people have given up on other people. And this is the moral truth we strive to center in our work in the Trump administration and in this great movement of ours. A true Christian politics, it cannot just be about the protection of the unborn or the promotion of the family, as important.
You guys hear what he's saying? Nowhere are the words conservative. That's been the old, since the 70s, what the Christian movement in politics would use. You know, the new right, the Republican right, or I'm sorry, not the Republican right, the religious right. There's always the word conservative, was kind of like the political code word for Christian in politics. But JD's just going for it. There is no mention of conservative. There's no mention of Republican. He's actually appealing to people's faith and humanity to build this party and showing you how they view their coalition, their party. And this makes so much sense as people like RFK have been brought in and given prominent roles. Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrats, but people of faith. That's ultimately what this is. There is so much going on here that we've never, ever seen before in modern politics. And you wonder why they want to destroy him. Let's keep listening.
As those things absolutely are, it must be at the heart of our full understanding of government. Why do we penalize corporations that ship American jobs overseas? Because we believe in the inherent dignity of human work and every person who works a good job in this country. Why have we worked, without the help of Congress, to restrict H-1B visas, for example? Because we believe it is wrong for companies to bypass American labor just to go for cheaper options in the third world.
I love that little dig at Congress, the do nothing Congress. And he just called them out. Like the people, this is exactly what they need to do going forward, is make it sure that Congress is known to be the enemy of the people. Congress is where the deep state still has power. It's no longer in the Supreme Court. It's no longer in the presidency. But Congress, which is Article 1, supposedly supposed to be the most powerful of the three branches of our government, that's where the deep state still resides. And that contrast is powerful.
We help older Americans in retirement, including by ending taxes on Social Security, because we believe in honoring your father and mother rather than shipping all of their money off to Ukraine.
Oh, he went there.
We believe in taking care of the poor, which is why we have Medicaid, so that the least among us can afford their prescriptions or to take their kids to see a doctor. And it's why we are outraged at the injustice of Tim Walz allowing Somalian immigrants to defraud that program to the tune of billions of dollars. It ought to go to Americans, because that's who it's there for.
Man, spicy stuff. So I love the picture he just painted. Okay. So he paints the Trump administration as a Christian administration. This is what we're doing. And these are all because of values, not because of politics. And listen, we could go down the list and I'm sure we could find a couple where we're like, well, that was politics. That's fine. That's the game you have to play. Okay. But we've never seen this before. We just haven't. I can go back in the last 150 years of every administration. We don't hear this. We have been slowly being secularized for over 100 years. That's just a fact. You have to go back to like the Abraham Lincoln's to hear speeches like this. Yeah, it's that powerful, and it's been that long. So when JD frames all this, and I love it because he's an outside the box thinker. In the past, our Christian Republicans haven't been outside the box thinkers because they've been beholden to religious organizations that were ultimately political organizations first. This shows the free thinking of a true, like people with true beliefs. And like, you know, I always think of what C.S. Lewis would say when asked about politics. He said, if Christians were really Christian and there was a truly Christian nation, it would not be as left as the left wants it to be, and would not be as right as the right wants it to be. It would be more balanced. Well, that's exactly what we're looking at. We're looking at a moderate administration that's called far right because the left has gone so loony and because Trump is intense. That's really what it comes down to. Because he acts strong, and they want to label it fascism because they're just trying to destroy masculinity. But JD is the perfect example of what happens when you're masculine and also classy, also not so intense, going after people. And this is why he, I believe, will be the candidate in the future that in rebuilding America, when he wins in 2028, and I believe again in 2032, I believe we're getting 8 years of Vance, because this man reaches the masses. I showed you guys the other night how he's the most popular politician in America with his favorable numbers, and it's not close. This is coming. And so we got to get past it and start thinking why this could be a good thing and stop playing these games. I always get back to the fact, who is ultimately against Vance? I know a lot of people in the conspiracy world, they listen to people like Whitney Webb, who, come on. I mean, Webb's going after the people that the deep state's going after. So you can do your own framing there. And I always pick on her because she's been the hardest on JD Vance in this quote unquote trusted conspiracy community. But there's a reason the reason I saw Vance should be VP going back to last March, not this past March, March of 2024, before Trump had even won the nomination. I knew it needed to be JD. Why? Well, it's not because I'm a Peter Thiel guy, or it's not because I'm Palantir. No, it's because I know that's all nonsense. And this guy is the real deal. And we want somebody who's been through the hell, grown up in Appalachia and drug addict environments, and then built himself up. Yeah, of course he had a little help here and there. Who doesn't? But this is a man speaking with conviction. we're going to watch the finish here. I love how he finishes.
Now, I want to close, my friends, but I have heard you. I know that some of you are impatient at the pace of progress, and my response to that is good. Be impatient. Use that desire for justice for your country as fuel to get involved in this movement in a bigger and better and more powerful way. I know some of you are discouraged by the infighting over any number of issues. Don't be discouraged. Wouldn't you rather lead a movement of free thinkers who sometimes disagree than a bunch of drones who take their orders from George Soros?
I love it. I love it. The fact that he's willing to call that out is so fantastic. It's so fantastic. I mean, and that's not just playing to the crowd. JD, you can tell he actually believes it. I mean, we've seen Trump going after Soros. We know this is a fact, that these people are automatons paid for, bought, and we in MAGA, we can have our disagreements. There's these influencer wars going on right now. A lot of it's psyop. A lot of it's on purpose to try to destroy MAGA. And listen to how brilliantly Vance is handling this. He is making a lot of this stuff a non-starter. He's speaking directly to the people who've been frustrated or worried. And after listening to this, how could you be either? He's handling it masterfully. This is exactly what we need in a leader.
And I know many of you miss our dear friend Charlie Kirk. So do I. I miss his optimism. I miss his energy. I miss the phone calls where we'd strategize about how to get this or that GOP congressman to get off their ass and do something. But most of all, I miss Charlie's wisdom. I miss his reminder that politics is not a dress rehearsal or a game. We are making decisions that will save our country and give the American people a shot at their dreams again. If you miss Charlie Kirk, do you promise to fight what he died for? Do you promise to take the country back from the people who took his life? Do you promise to help defeat the radicals who cheered his death? Do you promise to honor his memory by having faith in the God he loved?
Boom. That's so
My friends,
huge.
Commit to these things, and I promise you victory. I promise you closed borders and safe communities. I promise you good jobs and a dignified life. Only God can promise you salvation in heaven, but together we can fulfill the promise of the greatest nation in the history of the earth. Merry Christmas, my friends. Let's keep fighting.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm about to run through a wall. That's so powerful. But the one thing I really want to point out in those closing comments that he made there, you notice that he called to action, which is wonderful. He called to get involved, to not give up. But he said something very interesting. Again, no politician I've ever heard say this, especially not a prominent one who probably will be the next president of the United States. And it's just key to knowing he's not a deep state goon. This guy is the real deal. Is that he called everybody to follow God. Well, God's real. I don't care what you think. Like, most of you watching will be Christians, and I love that. And so you'll get this. But those of you watching who aren't, he's real. I don't care I've seen too much. I've experienced too much. There's just no way in my 42 years that there's any argument I could ever hear to disprove God, because I've just seen it. I've seen so much happen in my life that's miraculous and supernatural and directly the result of prayers and actions by Christians that just there's no doubt in my mind, not even a smidgen of doubt he's real. And so when you turn people towards God and he's real, that's the opposite of what the deep state wants. That's the opposite of what the communists want, because that's the most destructive thing to them. Because a person who will live for God first will never choose the state first. The person who will live for God first will distrust institutions when it's time to. They will listen to the wisdom of Scripture, the wisdom of their hearts, knowing who they come underneath. Christians are dangerous because they will die for their God. That, my friends, is the reason and the greatest evidence of all that he's not what all these people are saying. There's no talk about trusting in government. There's no talk about trusting in tech. It's about trusting in God and fighting for those values. That's everything JD just said. And one of the best speeches I've ever seen someone give in politics. Fascinating stuff. And I am so excited for JD Vance. He is going to be the man who, after the cleanup period we're in, the breaking down of institutions and all the stuff we need to be wakened up to, once that's over and 2028 comes along, JD is the perfect man to finish what Trump started and to rebuild our nation. I, for one, am excited, and I recommend you listen to the entire speech because it's fantastic. I know I'll be revisiting this one quite a few times. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe. I appreciate the support. And everybody, I will see you guys very soon. God bless and take care.